let's talk about it. Under the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance and Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Ordinance, Hong Kong has signed long-term extradition treaties with countries like United States, New Zealand, Canada and other 17 countries as well, while jurisdictions like Taiwan and China are not included. The idea to propose the amendments begins with a Taiwan homicide case occurred in 2018. In February, a couple with Hong Kong citizenship traveled to Taiwan as a trip to celebrate Valentine's Day. Yet, the boy strangled his girlfriend and returned to Hong Kong. A month later, his crime was found and reported. Unfortunately, under the current laws, Hong Kong government cannot transfer the criminal to Taiwan for trials. Chief Executive Carrie Lam, followed by other officers like the Secretary for Security John Lee and the Secretary for Justice Teresa Zhen, have repeated its necessities to pass the bill in order to transfer the murderer back to Taiwan. However, the Ministry of Justice in Taiwan has officially refused to accept any kinds of extraditions under the amended bill, in stressing that it will not be acceptable unless human rights concerns have been dissolved. It means that even the bill is passed in Hong Kong, the murderer cannot be transferred to Taiwan. Make it short, there are three major reasons for them to oppose the bill. First, due to the nature of China's judiciary system, it lacks credibility in convincing Hong Kong citizens to trust any kind of suspects would face fair and rights-protected trials in China. Second, although the Hong Kong government said she will not transfer political criminals or prisoners to China, there are cases like the Causeway Bay Book's disappearance and Li Mingche case, in which citizens were arrested or brought back to China, being detained and forced to admit their crimes. Citizens worry whether they will be transferred to China only because they have criticized the China Communist Party and its government through social media or books. Third, all people who enter Hong Kong could be transferred to China under the bill. On March 29th, the bill is published in the Gazette as the first step to pass the bill. The bill has been through the first reading and was read for the second time by the proposers in the Legislative Council on April 3rd. The bill was contemporarily handed over to a bill committee for discussions and studies before it goes for the debates in the second reading. On May 20th, the Secretary for Security, John Lee, wrote a letter to the House Committee and asked to resume the second reading of the bill on June 12th in bypassing the Legislative Committee scrutiny. Some events also happened consequently between March and June. Not only United States, European Union, United Kingdom and Canada have published statements to emphasize their concerns about the bill as well. Two protesters were also held to against the bill in Hong Kong. But what happened in June are way more important. A protest was held on June 9th. There were 1.03 million protesters demonstrating the law in Hong Kong, which was known as the largest protest after Hong Kong is handed over to China since 1997. At night, Chief Executive Carrie Lam told the press that she had no intention of withdrawing the bill, acknowledged that there are different opinions in the society. Second reading of the bill would continue. In the midnight of June 10th, conflicts occurred between police officers and protesters among the areas near to the Legislative Council in Hong Kong. Close to the afternoon, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs replied to the protests in saying that the numbers are not equal to public views, they are not convincible, and China government refuses any kind of foreign interventions in Hong Kong internal affairs. Later, protesters were calling for strikes and assemblies in Central for 2 days, from June 11th to 12th. On June 11th, over 400 enterprises and shops had signed for strike. 72 secondary schools joined, 52 organizations followed as well. Police start to send additional forces to central areas in order to maintain security. It is reported that citizens who were staying at the area were searched by police officers including the checkings of Congo ID cards. While it doesn't threat the protesters were still assembling and stayed overnight for tomorrow's protests. Since the early morning on June 12, more and more people were joining the protesting team in Central, which has been another version of Central occupation in 2014. Meanwhile, long cooperation movements were initiated, including to create car accidents to block the major roads around the protesting areas. Before the debate of the bill started, Legislative Council decided to postpone their meetings while conflicts between police officers and protesters continued. Later, more police officers were sent, equipped with route control weapons including tear gases and guns with beanbag round and rubber bullets. In the meantime, protesters were building roadblocks in different areas. Again, protesters reannounced their requirements, majorly requiring the government to withdraw the bill before 3 p.m., otherwise they would extend their actions including strikes, not to pay for the taxes, and to paralyze railways. Though governments did not respond, therefore protesters started to crush the police forces. Damages were created on both sides. Some journalists were also hurt by the police force. When the society was condemning police officers in their excessive usage of forces on protesters, Hong Kong's police chief, Stephen Low, called for a press conference and made three major points. First, police are restrained and tolerant in their actions. Second, the unrest is defined as riots. Third, you will be regretted for your lifetime if you don't leave. On the other hand, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House in America, released a statement referring to Hong Kong's protests. Despite of the stand in against the bill and the concerns of U.S. Hong Kong Policy Act, a bill called Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act was brought by Senator Rubio, Chairman Jim McGovern, and Congressman Chris Smith was mentioned. Hours later, Hong Kong Professional Teachers Union announced to strike for the whole week. After the Legislative Council Secretariat announced no meetings for today, around 6:30, an interview clip of Chief Executive Carrie Lam is released in saying that she didn't sort out Hong Kong and mentioned a mother theory in describing the relationship between the Chief Executive and Hong Kong as the mother and the son, which has been criticized continuously. 2 hours later, Carrie Lam gave a public speech to all Hong Kong citizens in condemning the violence of protesters and redefined the protests as organized riots. Protesters were slowly dispersed under the continuous actions done by the police officers. Afterwards, it is reported that 81 protesters and 22 police officers were charged. 11 protesters were arrested. Police officers had fired more than 150 rounds of tear gas. About 20 beanbag rounds were used, while accurate numbers of rubber bullets haven't been told. On June 13th, another long cooperation movement was brought out. The goal was to paralyze metro system in Hong Kong. Protesters reassembled near the Legislative Council in the morning, asking for the government to withdraw the bill again, and the protests to the excessive forces used by the police officers in treating students and protesters. Meetings were then announced not to be held neither in Thursday nor Friday. Later, China's foreign ministry responded to the press media to condemn the protesters in Hong Kong and to re-emphasize that external forces are provoking the protests in Hong Kong, and to state that the amendment is not an order from central government. In the same day, Civil Human Rights Front called for another protest on June 16th. Meanwhile, a pro-China party in Hong Kong started to advise the government to listen to the public opinions and to include the promises on human rights protections in the bill, which they have never mentioned in the days before. At night, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz introduced a bill to amend U.S. Hong Kong Policy Act, which mainly relates to the economic policies of U.S. to Hong Kong. Between June 14th and 15th, Chief Executive Carrie Lam was reported in meeting a member of Politburo Standing Committee of the Communist Party of China called Han Zheng in Shenzhen. Near to 5 p.m., Chief Executive Carrie Lam called for a press conference which can be summarized in the following points. First, announced to suspend the bill but not to withdraw. Second, stood for the police officers and insist to define the June 12th unrest as riots. Third, refused to answer to questions on resignation. While these summarized points are not hitting on the requirements of protesters, which they are calling to withdraw the bill, to revoke the accusation of riots on June 12 social unrest, and to resign. Sadly, an accident happened in the afternoon. After 4 p.m., a man went to the top of a building, handed a handmade banner written with the requirements to the Hong Kong government and to stand for a no to the bill. 5 hours later, the man fell from the building and died. It has been regarded as a suicide. On June 16th, another protest began. Participants were wearing in black. Near 2 million Hong Kong citizens went on the streets, close to one-third of the population, which breaks the record again. Due to the protests, the government published a statement in apologizing to all Hong Kong citizens, but neither Carrie Lam has shown up nor the requirements of the protesters are responded. Therefore, protesters asked the government to respond to the 4 requirements before 5 p.m. of Hong Kong time on June 20th. Otherwise, further actions will be taken on June 21st. On June 21st, the government did not respond to any of the requirements, although Secretary for Justice has apologized. Protesters, mainly students at first, workers joined later, initiate protests to occupy parts of the streets and to besiege central government offices and the headquarters of police force afterwards. Although protesters dismissed later on June 21st, they soon proposed another protest on June 26th to ask the G20 countries to put pressure on China about Hong Kong issues. In the midnight of June 27th, riot control police officers were sent to expel the protesters from the streets and the headquarters of police force. Later, police officers surround protesters and required them to remove their masks, to surrender, and to put their data in record. Protesters were finally dispersed. Till June 27th, the government has not withdrawn the bill yet. Well, these are the events happened and happening in Hong Kong related to the Extradition Bill. There are some side events occurred, such as petitions have been brought out in other countries like Korea and United States. Comparatively small protests had been held in countries like United Kingdom. While it is quite shocking that such a huge percentage of population was voluntarily participating in the 2 protests, and also to other events as well, they must have a strong sense of unity in their mind. Although the government officers are apologizing one after another, citizens will not be pleased unless the bill is withdrawn. Citizens are calling for accountabilities on major officers of the bill while no one resigns for now. Continuous actions keep proposing and going. Some protesters are trying to spread their voices around the world through propagandas. Unfortunately, we don't know whether the government will compromise first or the energy for citizens die away first. We don't know, but we will see. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe this channel, like and share this video, and leave your comments below. We will bring you more about other events and issues later.